Welcome, and we are here again Tuesday night, Not Your Ordinary Podcast. Tonight's topic are some people just lucky. Clearly, some people are lucky, but I was working through some others. So I was actually just studying through another scripture, and I started thinking about these ideas and put it down for the podcast. But I have this personal motto that kind of started when I first got out of the rehab and led to it was expressed in working out, fitness, and going to the gym and stuff like that. Is I basically decided I was going to marry the process and not the results. I was just going to become a fitness guy. That was my goal. Was I'm just going to start being a disciplined guy around working out, going to prayer, reading my Bible. There were all kinds of things that I was just like, this is just who I'm just going to have to become, this kind of person. And I've over the years have found that motto has pretty good company. And there are a few quotes that I came across while I was studying for this. The origin of this is not known, but you've probably heard the quote or some form of this quote that great men are born, are made, not born. Aristotle says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. The always fun to listen to and read about is Bruce Lee. Do not wish for an easy life. Wish for the strength to endure a difficult one. Thomas Edison, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Everybody has probably heard many of those quotes, but contrast that with what I would call a common mentality. Maybe it's more prevalent in today's generation or today's day and age or society, however you want to look at it, is the idea that there's got to be some way for me to strike it big. There's got to be like a moment, some event. One day I'm going to get a big break. People that just wait for things to happen to them. They're looking forward to some event in life that's going to change the course of the direction of their lives. Yeah. And so in a sense, they're looking for a lucky break. Yeah. They're looking for something to happen that changes everything about their lives, good and bad, and makes their lives better. But I was thinking about this in context of a very common, a very well-known scripture is in Ecclesiastes 9, when he says, I saw something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Neither is bread to the wise, nor the wealth to the intelligent, nor favor to the skillful, for time and chance happen to them all. For surely no man knows his time, like a fish caught in a cruel net, or birds trapped in a snare. So men are ensnared in an evil time that suddenly falls upon them. And so he goes on to kind of tell this story. I saw a small city with few men who was surrounded about by a great army, and a wise man or a poor man saved the city by his wisdom. Mm-hmm. So here's a guy who doesn't have a lot of resource, but because of wisdom, he's able to save a city from great disaster, right? But he says that the people ignored his wisdom. And so there's this interesting thing in human nature, and I've seen it play out. I've done this personally, where I am so into the big break or the big idea that I ignore the wisdom that would sustain me over the long haul. Yeah. And so the question for tonight really is kind of to highlight the importance of consistency, especially when it comes to the issue of Christianity.
You know my sermon title tomorrow.
I don't actually, I haven't seen it.
Maintaining momentum.
Okay, there you go. I'm in the right place then.
Yeah, that happens a lot. So
there is a lot of scriptures that talk about this idea. It is a Christian principle. Longevity is something obviously Christians have to know about, because we're going to live this life as long as we live it. Some of us into old age, some of us will die young, but ultimately we have to finish this part of our lives in order to get to heaven, and we have to finish it a certain way. So my first question is, in your experience as a pastor, how, obviously you can't really you attempt to quantify this. I don't think you can, but let me ask it this way. How common is it for people to try God, yet never experience God because they quit too early?
Well, that's very interesting, because this is what inspired me to preach on the idea of momentum. I was thinking about this over the weekend of how difficult over the years. I look at the church, our church. I look at other churches, and there are people that have been Christians for a long time. They've made it, and then there's new Christians, but there's not a whole lot of in between. And I thought that was very interesting, because you would think that you would have, all the way across, you'd have people at all different levels, but you don't. And I think that's the reason why is it's not so much giving up too early. It's just giving up. It's just plain the idea of giving up, because things are not happening the way they want them to happen.
Yeah.
And so they give up. They're doing it for a little while. Things aren't working out the way they want them to work out. And what we do, our brains are always thinking about different ways of trying to justify decisions, and so we go into this mode, especially when it comes to God. God's real. That he has a certain way you want to live. You don't want to live that way. You have your agenda, your idea. And so our minds go into a mode when we're in a situation like that. It's called cognitive dissonance. It's when you're living one way but claiming to believe some other way, and there's a disconnect in your brain that your brain can't handle. Your brain cannot handle these contradictions, and so it has to try to bridge the gap between those contradictions. And usually what people do is they create a theology. And so that's why you have so many religions. The question isn't why are there thousands of religions? The question is, why aren't there billions of religions? Because everybody's brain is dealing with an issue that they don't want to reconcile with God. And so we come up with our own ideas and thoughts, and that's where the problem lies. And so we develop this theology, which is it's a theology. I say theology, but to regardless of where you are in your ideas of religion, it's a philosophy. It's probably a better way of describing it, is we come up with a philosophy which really is just simply a justification for decisions that we're about to make. Mm-hmm. And so that's what happens is we have an agenda that this has got to happen. It's got to happen this way. It's got to happen in this period of time. And it's not happening that way. But we can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to quit. We have to say, this doesn't work for me. And so we have to come up with an excuse for why it doesn't work. And that's why you'll hear people say, I tried religion. I've tried that. I used to be a Christian. I have people tell me I used to be a Christian. I used to be involved in ministry. I used to do this, that, and the other thing. And I tell them, I say, but you're missing the point here. Is just because you found a church that you could deceive into believing you were a real Christian doesn't mean you were a real Christian.
Yeah.
And that you can't deceive God into believing that. God knows all along. And God's response to people like that is nothing. He doesn't do anything. He just lets them carry on the way that they're carrying on, and they'll eventually either come to a place to where they get tired of life not working for them and repent, or they get tired of life not working for them and change religion. That's basically what they do, and their religion could be no religion. But that's how it works. And so it's not so much people giving up, oh, God's not coming through for me, so I'm just going to go out and sin. No, it's I'm going to become a religion where my God works, and so my God's okay with me drinking. My God's okay with me, sleeping with my boyfriend or girlfriend. My God's okay with, all these kinds of things. And the reason for that is just so that way they can still be religious and still deceive themselves into believing that somehow this counts for the after death. And at the same time still be able to do what you want to do. Mm-hmm.
So in thinking in terms of, expectation and because the truth is, like, you have some people, like you said, you have these different, only a couple different stages of people who just started and then people who've been around for a while. But like, so you talk to people and you can If you talk to anybody who's a genuine Christian for a little while, you will find out how valuable they see Christianity is.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
They can tell you all the fantastic things God has done in their lives, and typically that's one of the reasons why they're still around, is because God's consistently doing things,
Yeah.
and there is an experience that's real and present. But what should the expectation be of every person that tries God? When I say try
Yeah.
God, I mean it like in the genuine sense, taste and see that I am
Yeah.
good, right? When you read that text, taste,
Yeah.
see that I am good, I think of
Right.
wow, that's good. That's instant, right?
Right.
There's no space of time there, but what should be the realistic expectation?
Yeah. And so that's an interesting, the way you've just, positioned all of that. That's why people believe that some people are lucky, because the idea of expectation isn't so much expectation, it's learning. There's no expectation. So the idea of taste and see that the Lord is good, that I agree with you. I agree with you. The analogy is you taste it and immediately there's this understanding. But that's the thing is that there's also, when it comes to tasting stuff, you may not like the taste because you don't like that type of food.
Right.
And so you'll instantly not like it, not because it's not good. And you have accused me of such many times, is and I mean, you even have names like what's the meat with the wrap? What was it?
Wellington.
Beef Wellington. Yeah, so beef Wellington. I mean, this is something that I mean, it's timeless. It's been around for a long time. This is like ages of fine dining, and I don't like it. And the reason why I don't like it is just simply because of the mixtures of flavors. I just don't like those flavors mixed like that. And so my taste buds, or my brain, more than my taste buds, my brain doesn't like that. And so, but there are things like, for me, keeping it in the same vein, I wasn't into mushrooms. I didn't like mushrooms. Now, honestly, to this day, I have no idea why I didn't like mushrooms. I don't know what it was. The only thing I can think of is because of having raw mushrooms in salad, where they just come up raw in salad, and just
very particular taste. I can get it.
And so that's the only thing I can think of. So I'm in an Italian restaurant with a friend of mine, and he orders these portobello huge mushrooms. I mean, it's like that big, and there's like one of them it's like a cracker, and there's cheese over it, and then there's this like oil. I don't know what it is exactly. It wasn't a wine sauce, but it's like an oil sauce. It wasn't vinegar, but with a little bit of seasoning to it. I'm not even sure what the seasoning was, but nothing heavy. It was quite light, and garlic. And he ordered, and I said, no, I'm not having it. I don't like mushrooms. And he said, oh, you need to try this. And so I said, okay, fine. So I took a bite of it, and I loved it. And I thought, this is fabulous. And then I realized, and then I started having mushrooms on pizza, and it was like, I love mushrooms on pizza, and so the idea, like I said, the only thing I think of is just the idea of raw mushrooms. But whatever, that's another element, that we need to understand, is we may not like something because of the way, that it's been prepared, and not necessarily the thing itself. And so the reason why I'm sharing those things is because when it comes to the idea of tasting and see that the Lord is good, you have to understand what you're tasting. I think that's a real important element to understand. Those kinds of scriptures, they were written in the Old Testament. They were fully intended to be read by Hebrews. This was going to be because they grow up knowing God. They're taught God. They're taught the things of God. They're taught the scriptures from a very young age. They learn about God, who God is. And so they've got an idea of who God is when the Bible says taste and see that the Lord is good. It really is from that standpoint of that they already know but haven't really engaged. Mm-hmm. And so there's a factor there that I think is important to understand when it comes to the idea of how are you going to find God amazing. Really, Jesus, he personified this, but not only did he personify it, he actually preached it. Is the whole idea is you have to approach it from the standpoint of surrender. You can't You can't approach it from the standpoint of, does God fit into my menu?
Yeah.
Continuing the metaphor. I like this kind of thing. This is what I like. Is God going to get with my program? Well, no, he's not.
Yeah.
Is he going to become, is he going to tailor himself to be on my menu? No, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to develop new tastes, an appetite for new things. And so that's a different way of going about it. So like what you said, you mentioned about the idea of praying and going to the gym. And there's such tremendous similarities to being a Christian and going to the gym. There's so many similarities. And you'll find that people that can go to the gym often don't have much problem. When I say go to the gym, I don't mean go to the gym like to go sit in the jacuzzi or to go lift for 10 minutes, or something like that, or go, once or twice, they'll go 3 or 4 times in 1 week and then they'll miss a month and then they'll go back. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about somebody who's really genuinely dedicated. They get up every day, they go and they work out every single day. Those kinds of people also are fairly good at serving God as well, because they understand no pain, no gain. They understand that if you're not going to be consistent with it, it's not going to make any difference. And the number of people that I know that, they're overweight and they're going to go to the gym, and sure enough, you can, all January, that's going to be the rage, of people going back to the gym, just like they did the year before and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that. And they're going to, this time, I'm going to do it. Well, no, they won't, because this time isn't any different than the last time, because they haven't changed their thinking. They're there for results, and that's the problem with going to the gym. You go to the gym and you do have results within the first 3 weeks or so. You have tremendous results, but then it's like everything disappears, because it's not just the law of diminishing returns. It's that your fitness level's so bad. By the time you end up going to the gym, you may think you're in great shape, and everybody does, but you go to the gym and you start working out, and then you start improving your fitness level. Well, now the distance between what's humanly possible and your fitness level shrinks. So you're not going to see that. And that's why you have these professional bodybuilders, and back in the day, why these professional bodybuilders were taking steroids, because you can't get like that. It's just not possible. You can put all the work in you want, and you can't look like those guys looked, without steroids, because you need enhancement. Yeah. You need performance enhancement. And now today you've got this diversity of performance enhancement. And now already, I've been back working out again for probably 5 months, I think. And already, I'm thinking, if I'm going to go any further, I'm going to need to get supplements, because at 60 years old, your body just doesn't have the recovery, the ability to recover at 60. And so it's like I get done working out, I sit on the couch and I'm like exhausted. It's like I need to take a nap. It's like, I wasn't like that before. It was like I feel good, I real little relaxed, a little tired. I'd have my, my post-workout meal, and then I'd get to work, and everything would be fine. But now it's just like I sit on the couch and I think, if you sit on this couch too long, you're going to go to sleep. You're going to because it's not old man going to sleep. It's passing out from exhaustion. I mean, it's literally what it is. It's just simply passing out. There's nothing there anymore. There's no more energy. And so, but you have to understand all those dynamics and overcome all those dynamics. And it's the same thing in serving God. You have to overcome those dynamics. And that's why, like I said, people who have a hard time, working out or doing anything that for any length of time that they're wanting to become proficient at. People who aren't able to do that aren't able to become Christians, or aren't able to remain Christians. Yeah. Because they get to a point to where it's diminishing returns. Mm-hmm. Until you put more effort than you're putting into it, you're not going to get any more out of this. Mm-hmm. But you've already decided you want to take the lazy way. I know people that go to the gym. They've been going to the gym for a long period of time, and they have no muscle definition. It's like, so what are you doing when you go to the gym? It's good that people go to the gym and they're doing their cardio workout or whatever and stuff like that. But, if you're going to be in there, why not go beyond. That's how I think about those kinds of things. But some people, it's just like, I don't want to go beyond. I just want to maintain what I have. And so I'll just do the bare minimum, to be able to maintain my health. And there's nothing so much wrong with that, but you're not going to look in the mirror and be happy with what you see. You're just going to see plain, you're just going to see, okay, I'm alive, because the older you get, the more work you have to put into maintaining that look. And so you might at 30 years old, you may not need to do anything to maintain that look, but at 40, you're going to have to do a little something. And then at 50, it's going to be a little bit more. And 60, you're all of a sudden you're going, man, I eat a breath mint, and I gain 5 pounds, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so yeah, because your metabolism is changing, everything's changing. And so, and so probably a long way around a short answer, which is really the expectation wise, the expectation you should have in serving God is really the expectation that if you do things God's way, and you are dedicated to doing things God's way, you're praying, you're reading your Bible, you're letting God change your thinking in your mind, developing an appetite for the things of God, wanting to see other people saved, as long as there's a vibrancy to your Christianity, you're maintaining a vibrancy to your Christianity, then your expectation can be just like it would be in anything else. The effort and energy that you're putting into serving God will reap benefits. There'll be benefits, from doing that, a life experience. And it's funny because you're talking about the idea of expectation. And what comes to mind is people are like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing the other thing. How come I don't have what so-and-so has? How come that hasn't happened to me like it's happened to them?
Yeah.
And because
that's actually where a lot of these thoughts came
right.
from, that idea.
And because I know that, because I know them and I know the people they're talking about, because they're, it's funny how people get this idea that they know people. But they don't really want to know people. They're really not interested in knowing people. They're more interested in knowing themselves and taking care of themselves. As a pastor, you're forced into a situation where you can't be like that anymore. You have to learn how to share your life with other people, and because they want to tell you what's going on in their life. And so I know the decisions that these people have made, and they've had to make difficult decisions, and there have been losses, and there have been setbacks, and there have been difficult situations, but they made the right decisions in the middle of all that, and just continued to power on, through those setbacks and difficulties. Whereas the person who's going, well, how come that hasn't happened to me? They never do that. Every time they have a setback, they just go back. So they go 3 steps forward, and then they have a setback, they go 3 steps back.
Yeah.
They're not okay, I want to keep going forward. I want to keep progressing. No, I want to go back. I want to go back to where I was before, because this isn't working for me. And I want to start thinking about, should I go out and sin? Should I go out and, do something else with my life? That kind of thinking immediately begins. And so they go right back to where they were before. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to serve God. I'm going to do the will of God. I'm going to live clean. I'm going to live right. I'm going to make right decisions. And then some, they don't get the raise that they wanted, or some guy or girl isn't interested in them, or their hopes or involvement in the church, or promotion on the job, or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. It's always these expectation things, and they don't get that, and so they want to go back here and just decide, is this even worth it anymore? They want to go right back to the same place that they were before and think the same kinds of thoughts that they thought before, and they're not, and they can't go forward. And so it's like this all the time. And they think, how come I'm not progressing? How come I'm not going forward? Whereas the people that they're saying, look at so-and-so is going like this, having a little setback going forward, little setback going forward, little setback going forward. And so they have these little setbacks, and then they go forward, where you have a little setback and you go back to where you were before.
Yeah. So that's, because you're the idea of going forward is an interesting part of this whole conversation, because it does kind of imply that there's a goal, there's a direction, right? And so, thinking about the scripture in Ecclesiastes, he's saying the opportunities are common.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to have opportunities in life.
Yeah.
And so, but the race is not to the swift. There's a race, right? There's a finish line. There's a goal. There's a time, something to cross. The bread and the battle and
but that scriptures, there's more in there as well.
Yeah, no,
that needs to be considered.
Well, no, let's talk about it, because the thing I'm looking at here is that there are things that people would like to have.
Yeah.
There are things that we would like to obtain, and that are worthy causes.
Yeah.
But, what is the difference between the people who get those things and the people who don't?
Well, that scripture used properly gives the answer, is because it is not, he's not saying, let's just sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch movies.
Yeah.
Because while you're sitting on your couch and you're eating your potato chips, there's going to be a knock on your door, and it's going to be a boss who's going to say, "Listen, we've been looking for somebody just like you that we want to pay $500,000 to a year."
That whole big break idea that I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that's not what he's saying. He's not saying that. What he's saying is that even when you are swift, even when you are disciplined, even when you are the kind of person that can succeed, time and chance still happen.
Yeah.
In other words, in addition to that is the break.
Yeah.
You need that. You need to be doing it long enough for time and chance to happen. And that's really what he's talking about. Time and chance happens to everyone. Okay, so that's a positive.
Yeah.
That's not a negative. I know it is. It is the way he's saying it is meant to be a negative, but it's not a negative in the way that if you'll just accept the process, is that if I keep doing this long enough, then I'm going to have victory. I'm going to have breakthrough. The door is going to open if I'll do this long enough.
So clearly there has to be, there's a mindset towards the negative and the positive.
Yeah.
Because he goes into talking about that men caught in a trap. So like fish caught in a trap.
Yes.
So clearly there's going to be times where the time and chance is a setback.
Yeah.
And there's going to be time and chance that actually is a thing that can
Promotion.
propel you forward, right?
Yeah.
So what is the difference between, what is the mindset of the person that makes it through all that?
Well, talking from personal experience, the mindset is the end of Ecclesiastes. There's only one purpose in life, and that's to fear God and keep his commandments. Because we do not understand right now the exactly what it's going to be like on Judgment Day. And I'm talking at the positive side. The negative side of judgment, we know. People are going to go to hell for all eternity. He's going to say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." And so we understand that, into the lake of fire. Now, whatever that all means is obviously the same for everybody. The lake of fire is really kind of you're disqualified from anything else. But when it comes to the actual rewards, the rewards are like they are on earth, is that you have, first place, second place, third place. You have rewards for various performance as well. It's not everyone is the same. Not everything is the same. Most valuable player criteria in football is different than baseball. So you have all these different ideas of what rewards are like. Disqualifications just right across the board. We know that disqualified means you're out. You're not going to have any of that. You're going to be disqualified, and you're going to have to suffer the consequences of a disqualification, regardless of what that means. There was a guy, it happened during the summer, I think, where a guy won I think it was during the Olympics, actually, if I remember correct. No, it wasn't the Olympics. It was a local event. I can't remember. It's a swimming event, and he won the swimming event, but he was disqualified because while he was having his sort of victory session, he jumped up on one of the lane markers, and he fell off into his friend's lane. They were both on the same team. So there was no disruption or anything, but because the law is the law, they disqualified him. And so he didn't win. It was actually disqualified. And he was, so it was a big scene. And so, but he genuinely won, but he's disqualified. Well, so he shared in the same defeat as the person who came in last, because he was disqualified. So there we know that, okay? We know that hell's just hell. But heaven's not. That's not how heaven works. But a lot of people think that, and that's why I'm kind of laboring on the point, is that a lot of people think that heaven is, you just get across the line. As long as you finish the race, then you're in, and that's all there is to it. But that's not the biblical understanding that we have. The biblical understanding is like the reward system that we have today of, like I said, first, second, third place, qualifying in different places, different rewards for different action. And heaven's going to be like that, and Jesus even communicates that. Well done, good and faithful servant, be over 5 cities. Well done, good and faithful servant, be over 2. Yeah. And so it's not right across the board. We just cross the line and everything will be great. And it's just, you're either in or you're out. No, it's not like that. You're either out, or there's also this whole diversity of possibility of what can be when you're in heaven. And so when you have that kind of thinking in your mind, that's how things are going to be, which is what I do. When you don't get what you were hoping for in this life, you offer that into the next. That's basically how I look at things, is when I have setbacks or difficulties or issues in my life, then I say, wow, heaven's going to be great, because this is going to be a reward in heaven. Yeah. It was taken from me on earth, but God is not unrighteous to forget our labor, and so everything is being recorded, everything is being remembered. And when we get to heaven, or those who are saved get to heaven, that will be remembered. Obviously there's still going to be the other factors, because getting into heaven, we're not going to get into heaven because we're perfect. We're going to get into heaven because of God's grace. And so there will still be things, there's a genuine judgment. 1 Corinthians talks about that. The idea of that, wood, hay, and stubble, things that are not, enduring, that we built with, or things that were built with that are gold, silver, precious stones, and so we're going to have this. All of this is going to be weighed out and rewards accordingly. And so when it comes to being a Christian, my attitude is that I want a full reward, as full as I possibly can, because eternity is forever. Yeah. And I believe this is real, and Paul says, if we are if in this life only we have faith in Christ, then we are of all men most miserable. Mm-hmm. That if you try to live your Christianity for this life, he says you're going to be more miserable than non-Christians. And that's what I see. I see a lot of Christians that are more miserable than non-Christians, because they're trying to get a reward in this life. Yeah. That's what they're laboring for. They're laboring for the rewards of this life, and they're not getting them. Because that's not how it works. God isn't. So the idea of tasting and see that the Lord is good really it's an eternal significance, not a this life significance. Taste and see that the Lord is good. He'll give you a wife. He'll give you a car. He'll give you a nice house. He'll give you a wonderful children. He'll give you, money. He'll give you the dream job that you've always wanted. He'll give you all. That's this life, and that's not. And until you have an appetite for eternal things, you won't understand, and you won't like what you taste.
Yeah. Okay, so I have I tossed a question out on the chat box, and my hope is, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When I pitch out these questions, and sometimes the questions are maybe not confrontational, maybe they required some level of transparency, but the hope is that in your answers and in the comments to your answers, that you can actually get help with some of this stuff and take something from the podcast more than just, oh yeah, we attended, checkbox, good to go, or that was a very good podcast, very good, and then you leave and don't remember anything about it. But my question for the audience is, what are some reasons people struggle with consistency? Now, thinking about this in terms of the whole topic, there is there is this thing in I've experienced this. This is something I had to actually like get over in myself. Is that if something started getting hard, all of a sudden I started turning my neck this way, and I started seeing somebody else's grass. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the classic saying, "The grass is greener on the other side," right?
Yep. Yep.
So, okay, this is becoming too difficult. I'm gonna try this over here, and I constantly stay at this stage of beginning things.
Right.
Always beginning things, never able to push myself into any success or fighting things through and just becoming a consistent person. And so I'm putting myself out there because, like I said, that's something I've had to get over in myself in my later year, my most recent years. So, wasted a lot of time in my youth, but here we already have a couple of answers. And so I appreciate the honesty of some of this stuff. But the first answer to the question, what are some reasons people struggle with, why people struggle with consistency, is no motivation to be better or not enough motivation, intimidated by others that appear to be doing better.
Yeah.
So I'm going to roll these out. We got a few already, but yeah.
Well, that's the interesting thing, and that's the thing that I think is really important to grab a hold of, and how to articulate this. It usually means I've got a thought in my head that's going to offend people, and I want to try to say it in a way that it's not going to be offensive.
We should have one of those things where we click it on, it comes up and it goes trigger warning, so everybody's just ready for it.
Yeah, that's what I need. Yeah, push a button and then all the
trigger warning, and then everything is clarified. Everybody knows what's coming.
Because this is the thing is, it's the classic. If the grass is greener on the other side, maybe you should start trying to take care of your own grass better. Maybe that's the issue.
You water every day.
Yeah, and that really is, when it comes right down to it, that really is why the grass is greener on the other side, is because they take care of their grass better than you do. Yeah. That's why. It's not they have easier grass.
Yeah.
It's that you don't take care of your grass. You may be taking care of your grass, but it's not enough. And that's the important thing to understand, is you may be taking care of your grass, but it isn't enough. Is very critical. And that's the way, you should really think. The next time you see somebody who seems to be doing better than you, rather than cherry picking all of their negative faults and shortcomings, why don't you try to find out what they're doing that's making it work? Mm-hmm. Because that's really the issue. One of the most rewarding things for me to have discovered when I was younger, I was like that. Everybody's an idiot and I'm great, and the whole idea of if anybody was doing better than me, it was obviously because they were probably bending the rules. They weren't doing anything legitimate. They were, because I already am doing everything legitimately. They're probably not. There's probably some compromise or something that's going on that they get the break, and I don't. But what I've learned over the years is that's never the case, because just the principles of how life works is, people can put up a front of actually being successful, but time always shows the otherwise. It doesn't happen in a week, but it does happen. And so I'm always, what is it they're doing? What are they doing that is helping them? And it doesn't matter what it is. I over the years I have no problem whatsoever talking to somebody who maybe they can't get out of bed until 10 o'clock in the morning, but they know something, they have some kind of insight or wisdom or skill, that I don't have. Like they get up at 10 o'clock in the morning and that's all they do is that thing, and they're really good at it. And so they may be lazy, as far as discipline goes, but they're very dedicated to that trade or to that skill or to that thing that they have learned. And I can just sit there all day and talk to them about that, and not belittle them or in my mind despise them because they don't get up until 10 o'clock and I get up at 6:30, or 5:30. And, it's not a comparison game. They know something. They've clearly gotten some understanding about a thing. I want to know how they got that. I want to know where it came from. That's why reading is so great. You can read a book by somebody. And this helped me. I was thinking about this the other day, is that I have it's not a big bookshelf. I have a little bookshelf. It's probably got, I don't know, 70 or 80 books or something like on it. And I thought, if it wasn't for those books, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Most of my books now are digital, and I've got hundreds of digital books, but that bookshelf, and that's the reason why I won't get rid of those books, is because they're the constant reminder. Those books were what made me what I was, because that was before you had all digital stuff. And so it was back when everything was black and white. There was no, you had to take pictures with black and white film and process it yourself. I go back a little bit, but so I always, and I think if I hadn't read that book, which propelled me years down the road, just literally launched me years down the road because of somebody else who does something better than I do, gave me the opportunity, and I may never be them, I may never gain their acclaim, but I'm a better person because I listened to what they had to say. And so if you're wondering why other people are doing better than you, maybe you should ask them why they're doing better. Don't be jealous of them and envy, ask them, so what are you doing? Because I'm obviously not doing it. And you seem to be doing better than I am in this area. And I'll tell you, you can gain years. I mean, they may have gained all that wisdom by 10, 15 years of hard labor.
Yeah.
They can say, well, this is what I've discovered after 10 or 15 years of hard labor, and you just have it without any.
Yeah.
If you'll do it.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Many roads have been paved by others. I was thinking those exact thoughts the other day, what you were just explaining. It's pretty interesting. Okay. Next one, laziness. There's actually two here. Laziness, both same answer. They came in right one after the other, but laziness, sometimes consistency takes a lot of work and it's easier to just give up, which boils down to laziness, in my opinion.
Yeah. So yeah, lazy.
How do you overcome laziness?
Well, I will tie that into the other one, the idea of no motivation, not being motivated, is that is really the factor that's missing, and why I don't think. Oh, I'm not. No, I retract that. Laziness. Okay. I believe that motivation plays a large role in overcoming laziness. But I think it's a little bit more than that. And I was going to say, I don't think it's possible to actually be lazy. It's just simply to be unmotivated. But that's not necessarily true, because you can have a very clear goal in front of you that you can have and just plain still be lazy and not go after it because you're lazy. But there's that. But I think the other thing is the idea of, why are you not motivated? What's the lack of motivation? And that I think goes to the deeper problem. The root of the problem that many have is the idea that somehow life is supposed to give you stuff. It's supposed to give you the tools in order to be able to do what you need to do in life, and including motivation. It has to provide everything. So it's like I've worked different jobs and seen different people start in a company, and they boast about how they have this great skill set, and then they say, well, but before I can be amazing, you're going to have to get me this, and you're going to have to get me that, and you're going to have to get me the other thing, and I'm going to need this, and I'm going to need that, I'm going to need the other thing in order to be amazing. And it's like, well, then you're not amazing, because if we had all those things, we wouldn't need you, because those things, anybody, if they had those things, would be able to perform properly. What we're looking for people that we don't have to spend $50,000 on in order to get them to be productive. We're looking for somebody that we can just, pay them a salary, and they'll be productive, to use your hands, right? Specialty tools, Yes, okay, right. I could do this, but I need a specialty tool. Okay, fine. But if somebody else can do it without using a specialty tool, we would rather have them than you. And so so what I'm talking about is a mentality. It's a way of thinking that if the world is not helping you to be successful, then you're not motivated to be successful. And that's the real problem, because the question is, why aren't you motivated?
Yeah.
Why aren't you? Especially if you see this, and this is very clearly something that you need to achieve in your life. Why aren't you motivated? Why aren't you motivated to achieve it? That's to me, that's the mystery that I see of for many, and the reason is because you're ignorant to the truth of your need to achieve this.
Okay, I was going to interject a question right there, specifically on that topic. There's we actually were just talking about Elisha and Gehazi. Elisha is this powerful prophet, and he was the successor of Elijah. He got Elijah's spirit.
Right.
It was like this passed down,
this
double
portion,
right? Double portion. He becomes this powerful prophet, and then he has this servant who's following him, he's a disciple named Gehazi. And long story short, there's a woman's son has died, and Elisha says, "Take my staff."
Yeah.
He hands him his staff. I mean, this is like that's significant. There's just a lot of significance in handing this guy's staff.
Yeah.
Takes his
He's
staff.
giving him the tool.
Exactly. He's giving him everything he needs.
He
technically.
thinks he's giving him the tool. That's the problem. So he is giving him the tool, but it's not the way he thinks it is.
Yeah. So Gehazi goes and touches the boy.
Yeah.
The boy doesn't raise from the dead, picks up the staff, runs back to Elisha, says, "Here, it doesn't work. Here's your staff back."
Yeah, your staff is broken. And that's the problem. That's the problem right there, is your staff is broken. And then when Elisha goes, he doesn't use the staff.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting at, is that kind of thinking, is the idea is your expectation and your motivation is missing. And because you don't understand the how necessary it is for you to achieve this.
So what do you think is the thing with, because you mentioned the idea you don't understand your need.
Yeah.
Right? Versus desire. Because to me, when I read about Gehazi, it seems like he really wasn't that interested in what needed to be done.
No.
More what he wanted.
Yes, and that goes right across the board. Take that and now roll it out throughout the ages. That is the issue. Is there's just a lot of people like Gehazi, is that they've been put in a place where they have the potential to achieve, where they have the potential to be and to become something, but they aren't interested in that.
Yeah.
That's what I've meant, getting back to that idea of tasting and seeing that the Lord is good, is that, the reason why it seems that some people are lucky is because some people have chosen the will of God. This is the thing I think is funny, is that, these are the kinds of things that usually people say, well, I wanted, I've been faithful, and I'm not married, but they got married. I've been faithful, and how come I haven't got it? They got a job, but I've been faithful and I didn't get a job like they got. And you look at all these different factors, and if you really were to go back and dissect it all, the person that got that great job wasn't looking for a great job. The person that got the raise and the income and the salary, they weren't looking for that. When I say looking for it, they weren't living for that.
Yeah.
The one who got the boyfriend or girlfriend that ended up getting married, they weren't looking for those things. They were looking for something else, and those came along. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you.
Yeah.
And so that's the dynamic that is missing in many people's lives, is that understanding that as you are focusing on the kingdom of God and God's will for your life, those things that you want to happen in your life are happening by themselves. Mm-hmm. They're not happening because you want to. When I first got saved, I was ready to be single for as long as was necessary. I knew that I would get married at some point because I knew God called me to preach, and so a girl was going to come along. But for me, it was like her. I was just like, any girl will do. I want to preach the gospel. It wasn't about, in my thinking, it wasn't about I've got to have a girl because I'm lonely and I have this need, for companionship, and I could never do anything for God without that companionship. It wasn't that kind of a thing. It was that I'm saved. I'm living for God. I want God's will for my life, and I know one day He wants me to preach, and so marriage is going to be there. But it was always in the background. It wasn't something that I thought of in the foreground of my life. So much so that God actually spoke to me 3 months after I got saved, told me that He was going to bring me a wife. And I didn't believe that. I thought that was just the devil trying to divert me, because I was dedicated to serving God. I was my whole, I can honestly say that when I was living in the guy's house, I could say, like Paul, I was laboring more abundantly than they all, that not I, Christ in me. That really was how I was living my life. I was on every outreach. I was at every prayer meeting. I was involved in everything. I even remember one time of going on an outreach, and there was a guy who didn't go on an outreach because he wanted to wash his car. And I was like, you're backslidden. You're not even going to go to heaven. You're going to go to hell for all eternity. You don't want to go on an outreach. You want to stay home and wash your car. I mean, that's where I was. I was so dedicated and so devoted to all this that when the whole idea of marriage coming so quickly, it was like, no, this is too fast. I want to serve God. I want to be living for God. I don't want to get caught up in this whole girl thing. And sure enough, was it probably 2 months later, my wife ends up getting saved and comes into the church, and like I think 3 months later, we're engaged to be married. And it was like boom, 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 boom. It was like, wow, this, happened really fast. And the way that it happened so unorthodox, and people ask me, so, was it romantic, and all this is like, there was no romance in it at all. I was so interested in serving God and so interested in doing the will of God. And I just, having a wife was like, if you want to serve God and you want to be involved in this, and that's what I told her. I said, I may end up in a mud hut in Africa somewhere. If you're not okay with that, we're not okay. End of story. We're not getting married. And that would have been the end of it. If she would have said, well, you know what, I don't, that idea of going overseas and, and living in a third world country or something like that, I don't think that's something I can handle. It'd be like, okay, great, no problem.
Yeah.
And on we'd go, but she would, that would be the end of a chapter. It wouldn't have gone on from there. And that is what I have found in my life more than anything else, is the things that I haven't been looking for are the things that God adds onto me when I need them, when they're necessary, but not, if it's not necessary, it's not necessary. And I'm talking 40 years. So there have been, it's not like I never had a thought of something that I wished I had, but I find that the things that I think, okay, this would be great if this was like this, they never happen. They just never happen that way. It looks like it's going to happen that way sometimes, and then it doesn't. It's like, oh, this is good. It's going this way. This is going to be good. Everything's going to be wonderful. And it's not. And it's just this constant reminder that, the most joy to be found and the most fulfillment and the most opportunities for time and chance to happen in my life have always been when I'm looking the other way.
Yeah.
Not when I'm looking at what I'm hoping to have happen. When I'm looking the other way and then they happen.
Yeah.
It's always been like that.
Okay, so this is another answer here. It's funny because there's only a few answers, but they've covered quite a bit of ground just in a few reasons here. But this one is being too busy or it not being a priority, so you keep pushing it off.
Well, again, that comes to that idea of not understanding, which probably I should go back to, is the idea of the need to achieve. And that, so you look at, we have the privilege of looking at these stories in the Bible that highlight individuals and the decisions they make. And we also get to see God's perspective of that person.
Yeah.
So we can see what God wanted to do in their life and what God did in their life. And we see how much that God wanted to do in their life had to do with their ability to be able to hunger for what God wanted them to do. Like Elisha, I want a double portion of your spirit. And, that nobody ever said that before. He's with the sons of the prophets, and they're, don't you know your master's going to be leaving today? You know, God's going to take him away. They knew that Elijah was going to leave the earth, and Elisha was not going to have Elijah anymore as his master. And so they're like, why are you bothering hanging around him? You're done. It's over. And it's like, no. There's a purpose in this, and that purpose is I want to be Elijah's successor.
Yeah.
You know, but here are the sons of the prophets. You would think they would want to be Elijah's successor, but they haven't been following him. They haven't been putting in the effort or the energy to actually become a man of God the way that Elisha was. And every time Elijah told him, just stay here, I'm going to be going, no, I'm going with you. I'm not going anywhere because you're going to go away, you know, any moment now. And I want to be there right up to the end. And then he asks him, what do you want me to do for you? And he says, I want a double portion of your spirit. And he says, if you see me taken up, then you will have that. And so you could see that was the will of God. The will of God was for him to spend every moment up to the last second with Elijah, preparing to become the next Elijah or Elisha. And we know that. We don't think of Elisha as, you know, when you read the scriptures, you don't think of Elisha as this, you know, secondary guy, because he did have a double portion of that. He was mentored by Elijah. But the other thing is, you see that he didn't have some of the flaws and the character issues that Elijah had to deal with. And so he stands on his own.
Yeah.
Well, now you have this other opportunity, which, wow, you know, if and he knows the story, Gehazi knows the story. Wow, what would a double portion of Elisha's spirit look like?
Yeah.
That would be amazing, but not to somebody who doesn't care.
Yeah.
And that's the real problem, is that it's somebody who doesn't care. And that is, when it comes right down to it, that is the difference that makes the difference, is that whole understanding of wanting to be what God created you to be. You know, how important is that?
So this will probably be the last question. And again, I super appreciate the answers, because they're perfect for what we're talking about. But, you know, and hopefully the answers are helping you guys. But you mentioned this earlier about maintaining a vibrancy, reading your Bible, wanting to see people saved, you know, praying and all, you know, there's a urgency is not the right word. There's a fervor, an excitement about these things.
Yeah.
Where does that initial vibrancy come from?
Well, that's the interesting thing, is the initial vibrancy is easy. That's January 1st when you make all of your promises.
So this really just comes down to a matter of sticking to
Yeah, the issue is not initiating vibrancy. The issue is maintaining vibrancy. And so that's the issue. Is I confess it's much more difficult at 60 years old than it was at 50 years old, when I first started working out again. And actually working out, period, end of story. Because I didn't work out at all in my 20s or 30s and 40s. But, you know, having a concern for my accelerated age seemed to be going faster and faster. And so I was like, you know, you better do something, or else you're going to be one of those people that, you know, is going to be talking about, I don't know, if it wasn't for these pills, I don't know where I'd be, you know, and I just didn't want to be one of those kinds of people, you know. And so,
excuse me.
So, you know, picking it up, and then having a gap of, 7 or 8 years, and picking it up again for the second time, you know, the one thing I know, and I know for an absolute fact, because it plays on your thinking, is that, you know, when Monday, it's specifically Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, because those are the weightlifting days. And Monday right now is also pull-ups, and Friday is pull-ups. And it's like, I hate pull-ups. I absolutely despise pull-ups, because my body is not responding. My biceps and triceps seem to be just fine with everything that's going on. But my shoulders and my back have said, you know what, we don't even want to do this anymore. We're done. Yeah. You know, we're finished with working out. You know, we're just counting off the days until we die, you know. And it's like, so I get out there and it's like, oh, pull-ups today. But if I don't get it in my head, okay, I'm doing this. How many pull-ups did I do last time? I'm going to do that and try to do more. and I'm going to always try to do more. That you have to make yourself do that.
Yeah.
You have to force it. You have to say, I'm going to do this. I grab the pull-up bar and I'm like, okay, here we go, and then my body's like, ha, 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 and it's like, no, I got to do this. I got to do this, and it's this struggle, but that's the key, to maintaining fervor. Because what's going to happen is if you give up on that and you're out there, forget it, I can't do this, then next Monday it's going to be, I'm not even going to do it today. I'll do Tuesday, and then you'll stop doing Monday, and then it'll be okay. Well, so I'll just do Tuesday, and then maybe I'll do something else on those other days, and then it'll be whole different realm, and then it'll eventually be, well, maybe I'll just go for a little jog for 15 minutes, or go for a walk. It's like, great, let's go for a walk, that's fine. But that's nowhere near the physical exercise that you need. Just going for a little walk isn't that's, all of a sudden you're going to live to be 100 years old and be in perfect health. It's just not going to happen that way, but at the same time, you have to realize that your body, your mind, especially your mind, it's going to say, I don't want to do this, and you're right, because while you're out there, you don't want to do it either. And I had a friend of mine who used to say that, every day that I go and I work out, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I don't look forward to it. I just do it because I need to. And I think, that's fine, but I'll tell you, you're going to have a hard time gaining, and achieving with that kind of thinking, because you don't want to be there and you don't care. And so you're going to get out there and your body is definitely not going to help you.
And you usually don't push yourself with that kind of mindset either. You're not going to push
No,
yourself.
and even if you do push yourself, it's for a minute or two. It's not anything long. But but these are life principles. This isn't just working out principles. These are life principles. But these life principles come because, and we see this stuff in the scriptures. We see it.
Yeah.
Don't grow weary in well doing, because you will reap if you faint not. These are biblical principles.
Yeah.
And so you've got to look forward to reaping. You can't just look forward to grueling inner effort. You have to look forward to, there's going to be a gain out of this. This is going to be worth it. You may not be able to see the gain, in the short term, but you need to be able to have a long-term vision for where you're going.
Yeah. Okay, there's a last question that came in just a couple minutes ago. Is there such a thing as a breaking point that could drive you to want to be better? Is it the same as desperation or a fine line?
No, there's nothing that will break and then you'll just want to be better. And if you wait for that, you might as well just get a headstone and carve it, because you're just waiting for time to elapse. Because life just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You will over and over again come to places of desperation, but that's not going to make you do the right thing if you're not already working on that kind of the right kind of thinking. In the little things. You will be. It's not that you won't be desperate. You will be desperate, but you'll be desperately lost. You won't be desperately excited about trying to change your life. You'll be desperately lost. You have to have a mindset. I can give a specific example of that in my own life. I was involved in drugs heavily, I would say, for about 2 years. So it wasn't like a long period of time. And during that period of time, it really jacked me up. I ignorantly, naively was suffering the consequences of the party life. I was losing motivation for working a job, being able to, I was staying up all night, and going to sleep when I passed out, waking up when my eyes open, and that's not a lifestyle that accommodates, any kind of productivity. And so then it was, I'm not working, and now I'm not working. And I was hanging out with a couple of other guys, and one of the guys was working. Me and this other guy, we were more sponging than anything else, and he didn't care because we were just sleeping on his floor. He had the bedroom and everything. We just crashed on the couch or on the floor. And and then I just kind of got tired of that scene, and I ended up in another one with a bunch of guys, and there was like 10 of us all in this one studio apartment that they had paid 1 month rent on, and we're now just waiting to be kicked out. And so we're all just hanging out in this place. And I remember waking up before everybody else and thinking, I'm not one of these people. Now that's the key. That's the key, is that I knew I wasn't one of these people. This was not an ego thing. I wasn't one of these people. These people had been living like this for years and years and years. I had only just started doing that. And it was only, for me at that point, was only probably several months where I was literally almost homeless. and I thought, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to become this. And I went out that day, and literally, I had no car, I had nothing. So I literally walked down the street and just literally applied at every single place that came along. Just applied. And then there was, I don't even know how in the world I ended up at this place, but I ended up at the Doubletree Hotel, and they hired me. And so it was like, yes, I've got a job. Okay, now I need a place, And so that was the next step, is getting a place. And so I was working at that job, but I was still doing drugs and stuff like that. But what I'm talking about is that moment of desperation required there to be the ability to motivate already. It wasn't that, oh, right, I got to get this together. Now I'm going to go. I knew how to get a job. I already knew how to do all those things. It was that wasn't the real breakthrough. The breakthrough is that I decided I'm going to do everything it takes in order to be able to do this. And it was a pre-existing mindset. You've got to understand, there's got to be a foundation. You don't just walk into a phone booth and that automatically makes you Superman. It's like, I know the secret to Superman is the phone booth. It was the phone booth. No, it wasn't the phone booth. It was what he was already.
Yeah.
The phone booth was just the place to change clothes. But many people, they think like that. I'm going to walk out of the phone booth. One of these days I'm just going to walk out of the phone booth and I'm going to be Superman. It's like, no, you're not. You're not Clark Kent wearing a disguise.
Yeah.
You are Clark Kent.
Yeah.
And when you walk out of that phone booth, you're still Clark Kent, because you don't have Superman inside. And so there has to be something on the inside. There has to be. And, that's the great thing about being saved, is even if you don't have anything on the inside, maybe you are Clark Kent from inside and out, you can get saved and God can begin to build in you a Superman or Superwoman that can come through. It starts on the inside and then makes its way to the outside. That all the work of God in a person's life starts on the inside, works on the outside. Religious people, it's just the opposite. It's all on the outside and nothing on the inside. Yeah. And when religious people are at home, they're by themselves. They're alone with their own thoughts. They're Clark Kent. They don't have anything going on. There's nothing going on, but they act like Superman. In front of other people at church, things like that. But that's how religious people have got it completely backwards. But somebody who's genuinely gotten hold of God and God is working in their lives, there's something on the inside that's desperate to come out. And so the desperation is, I'm tired of living the way that I shouldn't be, and I know what I should be.
Yeah.
And then you do it.
Yeah.
It's not the other way around, but that is a work of God's grace inside of us.
So clearly there's got to be something. And I guess the question is there something in people's, conscious or even subconscious mind of what they should be? Do you think that's more common than...
This is the $1 million question to me personally, because over the years, and when I went out to pastor, this is after 10 years of salvation, I was convinced that inside of every person is this burning desire to be something. I'm not so convinced of that anymore. There may have been, at some point in their life, but that burning thing has burned out and they've given up on themselves. They've quit on themselves. And so that's not there anymore. Yeah. And, so then the question would be, how do you rekindle something that you've lost like that? The Bible talks about how God won't put out a smoking ember. He won't come and just, do the final psst and it's gone. It's over. He will fan that and he will build that. And so, but there has to be a desperation before God.
Yeah.
is that you've got to come before God and say, God, I haven't got what it takes. I need you to do something in me. And then God will fan the flame and bring it to something. That's like I said about the books. Now you take that whole thought. That's me. That's my life. Everything that I am. Even, that whole idea, I labored more abundantly than I, but not I, but Christ in me, that really is the balancing truth, is that the productivity of your life really is down to how much you are allowing God to do inside of you. How much you're putting down your resistance to what God is trying to do inside of you, and being obedient and being faithful and all those kinds of things in a way that is, there's a measure of determination that I'm going to see this through.
Very cool. Well, if you are, stirred and you want more, this was the opener. Tomorrow is the main event, and we will be here in person. So we encourage you to join us if you haven't been or maybe aren't a regular attendee in the church. Come tomorrow night. It will be online, but we do encourage you to come in person. The information will be on the screen in just a minute. We are at 1100 Industrial Road, Suite 10 in San Carlos, California. So if you're in the local area, we encourage you to come and join us. We'll be here again next week. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the answers, comments, and we'll be here again next week.